Curious Nashville.
I'm Tony Gonzalez, and this is Curious Nashville, where WPLN reporters answer your questions. And today we're answering a slew of them, especially the weird and the surprising, and the ones that have sent our journalists out into the unknown in what is now 10 years of Curious Nashville. I'm happy to have been with the station and this project from the beginning in 2016. We've now answered hundreds of questions with stories that still have people talking. So today, we're going to revisit a handful of our Curious Nashville greatest hits. And joining me this hour for some behind-the-reporting insights is WPLN Metro reporter Cynthia Abrams. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So in addition to Metro reporting, Cynthia has also done a bunch of Curious Nashville stories, which is awesome. We're going to talk about that. There is sort of a special feeling to a Curious Nashville. Cindy, tell us, what is it about these stories that you like doing?
I feel like Curious Nashville is this exciting opportunity to go on kind of a wild goose chase. I think we often go into answering these questions not knowing what we're going to find, but at this point, we're pretty confident that we're going to find something interesting, whatever it is. And I think in my own personal experience, Curious Nashville has afforded me kind of a great opportunity to get out into the field, into some pretty interesting places. Curious is often very place-based, and I think as a Metro reporter, I've loved the opportunity to spend the day in, say, Centennial Park instead of City Hall.
Yeah, I love that. And, a little bit of foreshadowing here. We are going to hear one of Cindy's Curious Nashville stories later, but not yet. I know for me, I always love when we get a question that leads us to a story that we would never have thought to do, on our own. It's because of you, the listener, asking these questions that we didn't have on our radar, and I love that about Curious Nashville. So let's get into it. We're going to dip back all the way to 2018 for the first story today. It was truly one of a kind, a story that nobody in Nashville had ever told before, and that took me to a very surprising place. So that place, a grassy and wooded, forested corner of the Nashville International Airport property. From up above, if you look down while you're on a flight coming into the airport, you might see a gigantic peace sign carved into the forest. It is big enough to drive a pickup truck within the peace sign symbol. And I got to meet the man who created the peace sign and to learn why he did it.
I was on a flight leaving Nashville, and I looked out the window and I saw this giant peace sign, and I thought it was so neat, and it just made me smile. And I think I told everybody I knew about it, but nobody had a clue what I was talking about.
Are you familiar with this peace sign cut into the woods near the airport?
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
I'm wondering if you know, or if there's a story behind it, because I was sort of surprised to find out that I think it's actually on airport land.
Hold on. I'm going to get the map. Hold on.
The curbside area is a loading and unloading only zone. Do not leave your car unattended. Vehicles in violation will be ticketed and towed at owner's expense.
Okay, we're going to open this gate here and then we'll go on through. This is, of course, the power line right away here that we maintain as well.
I'm going to come out with you for just a minute.
So we have to go through all the keys to figure out which one it is. But there's ours. This project I started in 2004, I believe. And at that time there was no trees out here in this field at all. All of this has grown up since 2004. Use the phrase from the Blues Brothers, it's almost on a mission from God. This is the middle of it right here.
He's not going to tell you. He's not going to tell you.
Well, like I say, I'm an old hippie from way back, and peace signs have always been in my demeanor or my habits, anything I ever did. And it was just a natural thing for me to do, not thinking that it was going to be noticed or, cause anybody to be upset or anything. And then it, like Shannon said, it started showing up on the aerials. And I thought, well, if they don't like it, they'll tell me to stop. And nobody ever said stop, so I kept doing it,
You can definitely hear the din of the road in the distance, and obviously airplanes when they are landing and taking off. But otherwise, it's pretty peaceful here in the peace sign. It's just a gentle, curving, grassy path. The trees are growing tall, but relatively orderly right along the edges. It's been well maintained by Earl.
When did you go home and tell your wife that I made a peace sign on the property today?
She gets a thrill out of seeing it from the air.
But did you tell her when you did it? Did you go home and tell her?
No. It was, you got to remember, we're talking about, 14 years of effort here. So it was a slow, gradual process. I mean, I didn't know from day to day when I started it whether it would be there the next week. The first time I heard the air traffic controller over there tell the Army helicopter to hold at the peace sign, I knew it was done. I had done my work and accomplished my goal. The rest of my life is going to be peace sign related. I spent peace sign, I wear a peace sign. I live by the credo of peace. And however many years God gives me from now to the day I drop dead is going to be peaceful. And wherever I am. I don't know that I'll always be in Tennessee, but I can guarantee I'll be surrounded by peace wherever I am. And hopefully you will be too.
That is Earl Tuggle, a retired groundskeeper from Nashville's airport. That version of the story is actually one we've never shared before. You can find the full in-depth podcast about the peace sign in the Curious Nashville feed. But this is a story where, yes, we answer the question, how was the peace sign made? And then we got this bonus. We got to meet this really memorable guy. Cindy, I feel like you also have a knack for featuring characters. I mean, in your stories, right?
Yeah, I love a character, and I really feel like there's no better place than radio to showcase one. You get to hear someone's voice and their accent, the way they talk, their enthusiasm. It's the best way to understand someone better. Like, I've definitely met some great ones doing a Curious Nashville story. I met a guy who created the Little Chill Beach on, this tiny triangle of land. He filled it with sand.
Sand in downtown Nashville.
And
he was having parties there.
Exactly. That's a great character. Who is that? Whose idea is that? I don't know. Do you know what's up with Earl today?
I don't. Earl was a cagey interview, even while being interviewed. He was kind of mischievous, a little guarded about how he made the peace sign. I actually did try to follow up with Earl later, because after he retired, there was a question, will the peace sign remain? I could not track down Earl afterward, but you can tell in aerial photography to this day that the peace sign is still there and being maintained, I assume, by the other groundskeepers. So,
wow.
Great question. Well, next we're going to go to an even more mysterious place than the airport. We are going to a nuclear fallout shelter. And not just any bunker, but the one that was made specifically for the Tennessee governor in the 1950s. This is out in a rural part of Davidson County known as Pasco. You will get to hear a past summer intern at WPLN, Jay Shaw, telling you this story. There's no doubt that the Cold War caused very real fears in Tennessee. After all, Oak Ridge was the home of the Manhattan Project, where the nation's nuclear arsenal was being developed.
Our country and all its people could be in danger of nuclear attack.
The fallout shelter is the best defense.
Wait for the all clear. Be calm.
And for this fallout shelter, there were reasons to believe that it existed, including a property map that labeled a 1950s building as a former bunker.
I acquired it around 15 years ago.
This is Ray McCall, the name on the property records. And actually, he's very easy to reach, a well-known businessman in carpets and furniture. And it turns out he has the bomb shelter.
I actually lived close to it for several years and did not know it had the bomb shelter part of it underneath.
But once he bought it, McCall wasn't sure about the history. Why and who would build a massive underground facility in Pasco? It's surrounded by thick forest in an area of winding little roads and craggy hills.
Well, one of the great things about that location is that we didn't have many sightseers or gawkers come by there. It was difficult to get to it just on a regular daily basis.
The man with the answers, Cecil Whaley. He's a longtime leader with Tennessee's Emergency Management Agency. He knows this place because for a few years, his office was inside the old bunker in the woods.
We would have deer come by. We would feed deer out of our hands. We had pretty much raccoons, every conceivable wild animal you could think of shared the space with us.
Whaley says the bunker was built for the governor in the early 50s during the nuclear arms race. And the reason for its location? It was at the base of the highest hill around. The state built a 200-foot communications tower on top and the bunker below. Down there, he describes something out of the movies, a command center housing the state's earliest computers with secretive plans on the shelves and a table with seats for 40.
Looked like Dr. Strangelove's table, exactly.
There was also bunk space for 60 people, along with the showers, kitchen, water, food, supplies, everything that a group would need to live for 2 months. But after decades of use by an array of state agencies, Whaley says the bunker's downfall came at the hands of Mother Nature.
The mold situation, oh my gosh, it was just horrible. I mean, if you didn't absolutely work on keeping the mold down on a weekly basis, come back into the building and there'd be 2 inches of green mold on the walls.
So what is the place like now? I asked WPLN news intern Jay Shaw if he wanted to go meet Ray McCall, the businessman who owns it.
I pull up next to the site, 2 signs, state property, no trespassing, barbed wire. I should mention there are chickens there, the 4 chickens, and I didn't know why they were there.
And there in front of Jay was the plain facade of the bunker. It looks like a basic 2-story concrete retaining wall built into the side of a hill. No windows.
As I was getting closer and closer to it, I was like, oh, wait, we're going underground. Cool. You're telling me there's 23 inches of concrete all around me. Great. I'm here with strangers underground in this cold bunker. You go through the doors, rusted to all hell. Creaks open, you go inside, there's a shower contamination area.
Theoretically, I think, come in here.
There was occasional lighting, but most of the building was pretty dark.
And now you're really in the bomb shelter.
I don't know how I felt. I was just cold. I was very cold. I just felt like goosebumps.
And Jay told me it got even weirder. McCall had filled a lot of the rooms with vintage holiday decorations, which he'd got when the Bellevue Mall closed, including a whole bunch of nutcracker figurines, their faces leering in the dark.
Obviously, it was to a certain degree safe, but every time Ray would open the door, I would just tense up a little bit. I was like, oh, what are we going to find now?
Eventually, they emerged to the upper above-ground level inside a dark garage. McCall cranks open the overhead door to let in some light and leads Jay to the final twist here. McCall has converted an old radio communications room into an apartment. People live on top of the old fallout shelter.
Mikey, can we slip in here?
It has, a TV. It's very nice. There's a bathroom, there's a kitchen. But it was just such a different style of living in a former bomb shelter turned into a warehouse, turned into a quasi-apartment to live in.
McCall had bigger ambitions. The bunker could be an underground swimming pool, a museum, or a brewery. But there are challenges, like all the missing copper that thieves stripped out years ago. And in the time since Jay first visited, the bunker has been on the market, but McCall has not found a buyer.
God will bring me a buyer when he wants me to have one. I look at it like a bottle of wine. The older it gets, the more valuable it gets.
That is the voice of Ray McCall talking about the governor's old 1950s fallout shelter in the woods. Cindy, it's kind of a creepy place, an adventurous place. Are you jealous that you didn't get to go
a little
to the bomb shelter?
I mean, as we were talking about great characters, God will bring me a buyer. Sounds like a great character. The Nutcracker figurines, I am in that story. I am so intrigued.
It is
Lucky Jay.
It's a greatest hit from Curious Nashville. That building has recently been listed for sale again, so it is possible that the story of the fallout shelter has not totally been done and finished being written. So we'll have to watch for that for maybe a future Curious Nashville update. For now, we do need to take our first break. When we return, we will share 2 Curious Nashville stories that people keep wondering about to this day. And if you've ever taken the driver's license test in Tennessee, you will want to stay with us. This is Curious Nashville.
Curious Nashville.
I'm Tony Gonzalez, and this is Curious Nashville. We are answering listener questions with a reporting that is adventurous. We've been doing this for 10 years now. So today we are talking about some greatest hits of Curious Nashville. Next up is going to be a story that possibly has been downloaded more than any other Curious Nashville podcast episode. So maybe you have glanced at Nashville's skyline over the years and noticed that one hotel has a round disc for its top floor. That is the 28th level of the Sheraton. Kind of looks like a spaceship up there. For years, that top floor was a revolving restaurant. But a local architect wanted to learn why it stopped revolving. WPLN contributor Sam Zern chased down this answer.
I think we had one commenter say, oh my goodness, ask anybody who got engaged in the 80s and 90s, they probably did it at the Polaris. The most identifiable feature of the building is its 28th floor, the rotating restaurant. Pretty much the way you see it described by a lot of people in Nashville is the UFO. It looks like a UFO has landed on top of this building in downtown Nashville.
So what are sort of the first steps that you take to learn a little bit about the history and to try to answer Alan's questions?
My real first step was trying to find people who remembered the building in its heyday. It was, kind of one of the places to be downtown in the 70s and 80s. And you'd meet a lot of celebrities there. There's a lot of comments about celebrities from back in the day who'd, ride the hotel elevator up to the restaurant with guests.
Okay, so people remember it, but what about just filling in some of the basics? I mean, the who, what, when, why, where. Like, how did this restaurant start? What hotel was it?
To back up, it was the Hyatt Regency. It opened back in 1975, and this restaurant was really kind of part of ushering in Nashville as a destination city. I got an email from a woman named Deb Staver. She's an artist in Nashville, but back in 1975, she was one of the first people to work at the Hyatt Regency.
It's such a great, magical place to eat and hang out, and it's a great, unique experience. You really never felt like you were moving. It was very slow, and then, of course, you look up and it'd be a change of scenery.
But what she told me is that Nashville's downtown, not only did it look different, I think we all know that, but it also functioned really differently than it does now. It was much more of a shopping district. You didn't really live downtown. It didn't have the same nightlife.
I would give it credit for kind of launching Nashville.
Talk a little bit about what happened after those sort of glorious opening times in the 70s.
As a hospitality business, things can ebb and flow, and in the late 80s and 90s, it was definitely ebbing. In 2016, when the Sheraton underwent just a massive renovation, that included changing the function, again, of the restaurant. It went from being this occasional event space to now a private event space. So it's part of their venue offerings. You can host weddings there, you can host corporate events there. But, those few and far between events from before, those went away as well. And so it was just an event space at that point.
A select few getting the chance to sort of see that view. But then you got to talk to someone who really knew what was going on.
I managed to get in contact with the current lead concierge at the Sheraton Grand, Andrew Atkins III.
Got bit by the hospitality bug, and I've been a part of it ever since.
And we had at least one major burning question that we had to ask him.
Right. Can the restaurant spin again? Will it rotate? And he said definitively,
no. No, all of that's been taken out. It's welded. It's just completely that. No.
The restaurant is not only not going to spin again, it is not able to spin again.
I mean, you'd have to tear it all down almost. And what I'm talking about is the guts of it on the inside and the base.
If someone's curious about the current condition, albeit not rotating, what's up there?
Well, now it's called the Sky Lounge, and it's still like kind of a luxe event space. He told me that because of the social distancing requirements for bars and restaurants, they reopened the Sky Lounge to kind of take care of that social distancing.
That is WPLN contributor Sam Zern, and her story about the Sheraton's rooftop restaurant reported around the time of COVID in 2021. It is the case that the Sky Lounge is still in operation up there at the top. That is still what it's called. It is just not rotating. I'm here with Cynthia Abrams, our Metro reporter. Have you frequented or would you frequent the Sky Lounge?
I have never been to the Sky Lounge. I will say I grew up, I'm from the West Coast. My family, every time we'd visit Seattle, it was a very important tradition to go to the rotating restaurant that used to be on top of the Space Needle. Similarly, I think that closed at some point. And when I found out about that, I was devastated. So I think they've recently actually reopened some kind of rotating thing up there. I would go back to that. I would go to the Sky Lounge in a heartbeat if it started rotating again. I will say I'd be interested to go even though it doesn't rotate. What about you? Have you been up there?
Yeah, so I have not been up there. I have tried. I remember, so the Sheraton also has these kind of well-known elevators. They're kind of glassy elevators that are they kind of have a cool view as you go up the elevators. And I remember taking my kid when maybe Lily was 3 or 4. We just did an adventure downtown one day and went into the hotel and took the elevators up, but we could not access. At that point, it was closed. But I do think, I remember that even without the rotating, it is known for having a really good view from up high, and you can obviously travel around and see like different views of Nashville. So I think it could be pretty cool. You know, that story that Sam Zern did for us, I really like how it combines, several eras of history. Those nostalgic memories are also in there. Plus, it was this question that a lot of people were wondering about, into the current day. Cindy, I feel like a lot of your reporting often kind of does that combo too. A little bit of history, a little bit of current.
I feel like that is the magic combination that is Curious Nashville. I can share a sneak peek of the question I'm working on for a future episode. Yeah. Don't want to give it all away, but it combines a question about the Brentwood Library, which, people go to all the time.
It's open, yep.
And some history about where and how it was built that people might not realize is right beneath their feet.
So that's coming up in a future Curious Nashville. Yes. That one is a work in progress. Love that. Well, another part of Curious Nashville is when we get a question from a listener, and then the reporting turns into something a bit more investigative. So in 2022, reporter Alexis Marshall took on a question about the state's driving exam and how tough it can be to take this test because of how few languages it is offered in. And specifically, the question was, why isn't Arabic offered on the state's driving exam?
Just after English and Spanish, it's actually Arabic that's the third most spoken language in Tennessee. Nearly 27,000 people in the state speak it, and Abraham is one of them.
Hey, Alexis. Hi, how are you? Come on in.
He's Egyptian American and runs courses to help others in his community pass their naturalization tests. But he says one of the biggest barriers for his students is transportation.
With the weak public transportation system that we have, a lot of people, they need cars to drive to their schools, to work, to just, meet their basic needs.
That's a sentiment that was echoed by a lot of his students at a recent night in the classroom. Some of them described riding the bus upwards of an hour for a trip that otherwise would have taken minutes. Others have to wait for friends or rideshare services to pick them up.
She goes to work at 2 a.m. and she's not supposed to start her shift till 5 a.m. So she had to wait 3 hours just to get a ride.
With all of these complications for thousands of residents who could benefit, Abraham asked Curious Nashville why the state doesn't offer Arabic as an option on the driver's license exam. To find the answer, let's first talk about how the current system works. The test we're talking about is the knowledge exam, the one you take on a computer at the DMV that tests how well you know the rules of the road. The knowledge exam is currently offered in 5 languages. One might expect English and Spanish, but you may not guess the other 3, Korean, Japanese, and German. According to Director of Driver Services Michael Hogan, that's the result of economic development.
If you think about Korean and Japanese, and this was back in the early 80s or 90s when they brought the Nissan plant in Smyrna, Tennessee, and then, of course, Germany.
He says that was added when Volkswagen set up shop in Chattanooga. Hogan says that's how new languages have been added to the test in the past. But
we've never closed the door on considering adding additional languages. It's just historically that's what it's been.
There have been multiple calls in the last decade to add Arabic. Hogan has said it would cost between $3,000 and $5,000 to offer the test in Arabic, potentially more to translate study materials. That's a tiny fraction of the division's annual budget of tens of millions of dollars. But he said they had other priorities back then.
If somebody, like if I were to go to my source and let him know, there's a process for getting this done, what would be the first step in that process for him?
Have him reach out to my office.
Okay, I will.
And we will get the conversation started. We'll set up a meeting and I'll get the right people at the table and we'll go from there. How about that?
So that's what Abraham did. A couple weeks later, he was explaining the transportation challenges of Arabic speakers directly to Hogan. Hogan had already asked me to send data about what languages are most popular in Tennessee. Then he asked Abraham about whether the exam would need to be in different dialects and what Tennessee's peers are doing. Kentucky, Alabama, and Georgia all offer the exam in Arabic. During the meeting, Hogan tells Abraham he's communicated up to other officials in the department.
I can't make any guarantees, but I can at least say that the ball is in a better position now than it was a month ago.
At an apartment complex in Smyrna, Zainab Amin walks me to her friend Rasha's building. She knows from personal experience what a difference a driver's license can make. They both moved here from Egypt in July last year and were basically homebound through much of the fall. While we chat over a plate of cookies, Amin says she studied intensely for 3 months to translate study materials and pass her exam. She explains through an interpreter how life has changed since receiving her license.
So life is much easier now. She's not imprisoned in her house, and if her children want to go and do something, she can take them around.
She says having the exam in Arabic would have made things a lot easier for her. But now, with a driver's license, Amin is enjoying her freedom, and she's ready to tackle some new challenges, like driving at night and navigating with GPS.
Navigating with GPS. That was next on the schedule for that driver. We were listening to Alexis Marshall reporting that story from 2022. To this day, the driver's exam in Tennessee has not gotten a language change. Arabic has not been added. A coalition of advocates has continued pushing for this. We've checked in with them periodically. But at the same time, simultaneous, there have been some rumblings at the state legislature about potentially eliminating some of the languages offered on the exam. So this is a story that is still very much relevant today.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like so many parts of this story, it's interesting to kind of place them a few years later in today's context. I think I saw that this morning. The state legislature is checking citizenship of truck and bus drivers, and just thinking about kind of who's like our interactions with people who drive and how important it is kind of like an economy. I think every time I take an Uber back, almost every time recently I've taken an Uber back from the airport home, I've had often a Kurdish immigrant as my driver. I think that I spoke with one of them recently kind of about how like a lot of his friends were starting to drive for Uber or Lyft, and he joined too. And, I think I actually had an interaction once with a driver who we communicated completely through Google Translate. He had just moved here from Kurdistan, and we were like, he was learning English. He was kind of telling me about his life story. Super interesting. But it is interesting. I actually am curious about his path to getting his driver's license. And that didn't come up for us, but
Sure.
it's something I think that's still very relevant here in Nashville.
Well, yeah. And I think, when you get to hear from the folks in that story and, people trying to get to work, trying to do their essential day-to-day things, it could be kind of easy to take for granted driving or getting the driver's license. But then it's so essential for folks to have.
Absolutely.
For their livelihood. The other, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, beyond that, I think it really, having people driving drives our economy in unseen ways that we maybe aren't thinking about. So,
yeah, it's something to do a Curious Nashville story about. The other thing that I find really awesome in that story, there's that moment where Lexi helps facilitate Abram, the question asker, talking with the state official. I don't know. I think that is also part of the reporting. You don't always get to kind of hear that step by step. We try to convey that in Curious Nashville. Cindy, what is it like? I mean, I guess you try to talk to the question asker to understand like how or why they even have a question.
Well, I think that's something that really kind of sets the Curious Nashville project apart from, your standard reporting. Of course, we, are always talking to our sources. People are pitching us on stories. But I think in Curious Nashville, it's like a slower process. I think we almost always start by reaching out to the question asker. Once we've picked that question, we try to connect with them and we record that conversation. I think that's something I don't always do in my own standard reporting is like, I might talk to someone on background, kind of get a feel for what the story is. But we kind of see it as this interesting opportunity for sound.
Sure, and to capture that moment of not knowing.
Exactly.
Like instead of like it just being a news story where it's like, here's the facts, authoritative, here's what we know. You, the reporter, but also the question asker, have to kind of be there saying, we don't know.
Yeah, it's a fun moment to sit on the phone with the person who asked the question and be like, we're both in the dark, and where are we going to go next?
Right, and to capture that moment of being puzzled and motivated enough to go chase down the answer. Yes. That is part of the secret sauce of Curious Nashville. Well, on the driver's license exam, we will have to see what happens next. But for now, right now, we have to take one more break. When we come back, we are going to stoke your curiosity even further and show how there are little mysteries all around us in the community. Plus, you will get to hear one of Cindy's Curious Nashville stories. You're listening to Curious Nashville. I'm Tony Gonzalez, and this is Curious Nashville. Our team has been answering your questions for 10 years now. Questions about weird things on the side of the road. Questions about place names, local history, trees, the little stickers you can pick up after you vote. These questions run the gamut. And one of the beautiful things is that we often answer a question that someone else is going to wonder about later. Our next story is a good example of kind of the long shelf life of these Curious Nashville tales. We have received many questions over the years about the Tennessee State Capitol. Obviously, that is a busy place right now with lawmakers back in session at the start of the year. It's a place that just draws a lot of interest all of the time. It's so prominent and visible. So a couple of years ago, our former political reporter Blaze Gainey gathered these answers about the state capitol.
Inside the state capitol, there are guided tours usually taking place for visitors. And like most museum tours, the guide gave a quick pop quiz.
Of these gentlemen. Does anybody recognize this guy? He's on the $20 bill. There you go, Andrew Jackson.
That's Philip Staffelli Sewell, and he's noticeably good at his job. I mean, he knew everything about the building. One fact I learned was that Tennessee has the oldest working state capitol in the country. It was completed in 1859 and last renovated in 2022. But for some answers, I was pointed in another direction.
My name is Ann McGarn, and I am the state architect for Tennessee.
One of the first answers I sought out was whether the capitol was built on an Indian burial mound, since it is on a steep hill. The short answer?
No, the state capitol is not built on Indian burial ground. The capitol sits on a dome of limestone bedrock, and these hills or knobs are common throughout Tennessee.
The Capitol is also built of limestone from around the area. But that doesn't mean that there isn't anyone buried at the Capitol.
The architect of the Capitol, Mr. Strickland, is buried in the Capitol. And then there is the first chairman of the Capitol Commission is buried in the Capitol as well.
The grave of architect William Strickland is located in the north wall of the building, while Samuel Morgan, the chairman McGurran mentioned, is located in the south wall. And there's more bodies, which Stefeli Sewell often tells people on his tours.
So not only are we the only U.S. state capitol to have 2 dead guys on our walls, we're the only one to have a former First Lady and President on the grounds as well.
For those who don't know, it's the 11th U.S. President James K. Polk and his wife Sarah. Their grave sites are located in the East Garden. Other listeners wonder about the aesthetics of the Capitol building. When looking at it from the Bicentennial Mall, the Capitol, for the most part, looks symmetrical, except for the fact that from James Robertson Parkway, there's only one staircase. It ends up looking like an incomplete horseshoe. One listener wanted to know why it looks unfinished. State architect McGurran says it has a lot to do with what you can't see.
The reason that only one set of those, half of the horseshoe was built up into Capitol Hill is on the underground, on the other side where the other half of the horseshoe would go, is a very large utility line infrastructure that would cost over $1 million to relocate. And so that put a damper on that being cost effective for the state.
And while we're focusing on the outside of the Capitol, one listener wanted to know who mows the lawn. It's a lot of grass to mow. So of course, the state had to hire a landscaping company. They chose Brightview, which mows state property. They do baseball fields, golf courses, and even handles snow removal.
There are strict requirements of how they're supposed to, quality controls within that contract that they adhere to.
So have there ever been words or a picture mowed into the lawn? McGurran says the company hasn't, but there was a prank one time.
When the Predators were in the playoffs, where somebody had stenciled paint on that hill, and then we did mow it out.
Fun fact, that person was none other than President and CEO of the Predators, Sean Henry. He admitted to participating in the act in an interview with the Nashville Business Journal back in 2020. They spray painted "Let's Go Preds." But while the rules don't allow the Capitol to display messages or pictures on the lawn, they do light up the cupola to show their support. That was actually a question we received. A listener wanted to know why the cupola was lit up in various colors depending on the night. McGurran says there's a process to request a ceremonial color.
So things like the World Orphan Day, there's various cancers or disease days. There's also Domestic Violence Awareness Month, but they could also be something like, a major Titans game.
That answers all the questions we had from listeners about the Capitol, but if there's anything else you want to know, I suggest taking a trip down to the building itself and joining Stefeli Sewell for a tour.
Before we get going, does anybody have any questions? All right. Now, before we flip on to the other side, I will note these lovely...
A familiar, friendly voice there, former State House reporter Blaze Gainey, walking us through some trivia about the Tennessee State Capitol. He was able to fit a lot in there. Yeah. I have never personally done the tour of the Capitol. I've been in there to cover stories, of course. Cindy, have you ever done the tour?
No, I haven't. I'm definitely interested to now after hearing that. I do remember, I think maybe on like my second day living in Nashville 5 years ago, I was interviewing for a non-journalism job at the Hermitage Hotel, and a lot of history there too. A lot of history, and I hopped out, was walking to my car, and I saw the Capitol, and it's very striking. I remember just feeling like, whoa, I live in Nashville, and I walked around the perimeter of the Capitol and just kind of basked in the history a little bit. So I am planning to spend some time there. As the Metro reporter, I'm not doing a ton of State House reporting, but I am planning to cover some bills this session. So little did I know, I think 5 years ago, as I walked around it, that I would be doing that. It's funny to look back.
Well, we'll listen out for that reporting when it comes. You're right, though. It is a striking building and a really kind of accessible grounds. I've gone for walks around there and looked at some of the monuments and that kind of thing. Of course, there's people like working out on the stairs and running the hills and sledding once a year or whatnot. So it is kind of an interesting place to be.
It's easy to forget, I think, how kind of rare the Nashville Capitol is. It's, in the U.S., we don't have a ton of capitals that are in the biggest city in the state. So it's fun to kind of remember that and have that space.
Yeah, and if there are questions, it sounds like there's a tour guide there who can probably answer them. Well, we have time for 2 more curious stories from our project's 10-year history. This next one really shows that if you keep your eyes peeled, you might notice something interesting, and then if you ask us, you might learn something about it. So, on the back of dump trucks out on the road, there is often a little sign that says, "Keep back 100 feet." Another sign you might see, "Not responsible for any damage." Well, someone was wondering if this is true about responsibility on dump trucks, and contributor Josie Beavers unpacks the answer.
No matter what he's driving, Alan Powell is unlucky.
I remember there was one period of time, it was just maybe pre-COVID, but it seems like I got hit by 3 or 4 different things in the course of a week. Each one of them started a new crack in my truck's windshield.
He's gotten dinged in his personal car, work truck, and a rental car, all from driving behind dump trucks. He says he tries to stay back the recommended distance. It is a good rule of thumb, but that dense traffic makes this tough.
If it's happening this much to me, it's surely happening to other people with some frequency.
In general, those signs that say keep back 100 feet on dump trucks, they're just signs.
And this is Isaac Kimes. He's a civil litigations attorney in Nashville, and he says the signs on the back of trucks don't hold much legal weight. One thing that does matter is whether any debris hits the road before striking a car. If it does bounce, the dump truck is not liable, and those rocks or pebbles are considered a roadway hazard. But Kimes suggests the signs do play a different purpose, to try to protect the trucking companies.
Without assuming wholly nefarious intent, signs are also likely placed to make drivers think that they don't even have a claim and shouldn't make one.
For Powell, the evasive tone of these signs speaks to a larger issue, less about what's legal.
It's more than the fact that my windshield got hit by this piece of debris or that. I think it goes a little bit beyond that when we start to ask ourselves, why would we allow this to be the way we operate?
With dump trucks, there's a lot of mixed signals. And then when it comes to actually proving an insurance claim for damage, that's a whole nother issue. Josie Beavers, WPLN News.
What a great first line. No matter what he's driving, Alan is unlucky. So good.
You know, we try to hook them with a Curious Nashville story. I do want to say, so this dump truck story is one that is kind of near and dear to my heart for a couple of reasons. It's a short story. It's like a minute and a half or two. But this question came in at a time when I was commuting a bunch to preschool on Briley Parkway, where there are a ton of dump trucks. So every day I was seeing dump trucks, and I also was noticing these signs that say keep back or, not responsible for damage or whatever these, there's various versions of these signs. So when I saw this question come through, I was also very curious. And I had seen rocks and pebbles come off of dump trucks. So I wanted to know. So I was glad that we had someone to figure it out. Fun fact, Josie was an intern for WPLN from Harpeth Hall when she completed that story and that research. And pretty soon, coming up, we will be putting out another Curious Nashville answer from our most recent Harpeth Hall intern. You can look for that on our website soon. Cindy, I think one of your first stories for WPLN was also Curious Nashville. I'm kind of wondering, was it intimidating, rewarding? What was it like to try to find an answer once you've been assigned a story like this?
Yeah, it was. It was one of my first or second stories with WPLN was about freight trains.
Yes.
And, I think Curious Nashville is the perfect assignment for a new reporter and a veteran reporter too, for that matter. But I just think the questions we get are so great, and it can be intimidating to pitch stories as an intern or, on your first day. So to kind of have a question that we've vetted, we're like, there's something
and we know
there.
Someone's wondering about it.
Yes.
We're wondering about it.
Yes, it's validating. We know that these are questions that listeners want and are curious about and need to know. That's why they're asking them, which really at its core is kind of what public radio is all about.
Yeah, well, and I think there's also, if you're trying to answer a question, you kind of know once you've completed the story. Have I answered the question so that our listeners will be served? Of course, we don't just try to answer the question. We also try to have a little fun with it or meet characters, learn a little something along the way. But yeah, I love the Curious Nashville format. I'm glad you're doing those stories too. Well, with all of this in mind, we are going to wrap today by hearing one of Cindy's curious adventures. It's another kind of quick hit story, just a couple minutes long. So at Centennial Park here in Nashville, you might notice 5 stacks of white boxes. They're on a little island in the pond in Centennial Park. Those white boxes are beehives. And Cindy ended up paddling out to learn who cares for these bees.
These girls, they're not mad. They're just buzzing around.
That's Jennifer Cox, one of 4 volunteer beekeepers who has come to care for the Centennial Park hives. All 4 are members of NABA, the Nashville Area Beekeepers Association. About 10 years ago, the nonprofit got a call saying that the woman who had been caring for the hives had stopped showing up. The Park Service asked,
could Nashville Area Beekeepers Association take over?
That's Seth Cooper. He's a retired physician and beekeeper.
We came out here and they were in pretty bad shape.
But it wasn't long before NABA volunteers revived the hives. And now, in the summer, they're on the island once a week to check on the girls. Thousands of them. As they peek in the hives, they want to make sure that the queen is laying eggs, workers are bringing in pollen, there aren't too many pests, and that there's enough room for honey storage. Pretty soon, the keepers will be harvesting that honey, though they have to wait until the summer to do so.
You have to do it on a hot day because the honey doesn't flow when it's cold, So it's everybody's sweating and it's hot and sticky.
But when they're done, that sweet harvest will be for sale in the Parthenon Museum in Centennial Park. Cynthia Abrams, WPLN News.
The buzzing of the Centennial Park bees as captured by Cindy Abrams. Cindy, can you paint a little picture of what it took for you to get out to those bees in the hives?
It was a little bit of an ordeal. I got to put on the full beekeeper suit.
So the white,
the
mesh
netting,
netting.
In front of your face. Yeah. You've got gloves on, so it was a little bit difficult to manage. I had a camera and my mic with me. I was trying to handle it all. I had some help from the lovely beekeepers, but we also had to take a little boat because the hives are on an island, so we had to get in a little rowboat, row on out to the hives, and then it was
so
a blast.
You're in the beekeeping. I don't know if it's a costume. You're in the gear, with your gear, in a boat on an island.
Exactly.
I love it. It is hard to beat that as a reporting adventure.
Yes. And that's what was so great about that question in itself.
Well, and it's kind of a simple question.
Absolutely. I think that was part of it is we kind of knew the answer when we got the question. I think a quick Google search.
So this is one where you could Google and know roughly what's going on.
Exactly. Okay. We got the question, we looked it up, kind of started to piece it together. Obviously, there were some gaps, but it still felt like there was a story there. There's such a visceral scene. I felt like the sound of the bees buzzing, the people who are doing it, their characters, finding out a little bit more about a woman used to do it and then mysteriously stopped showing up. Like there was a story there beyond the basic question and answer that we had in hand. And that's kind of the dream for Curious Nashville.
Right. Yeah. Because it could be a 1-sentence story. It is the Association of Beekeepers of Nashville. But instead, we get to learn something more about something that, thousands of people go past the hives every day.
Yeah.
Someone asked Curious Nashville. Now you have the answer. Of course, you can ask anybody. You can ask a question at curious.wpln.org. Well, this has been our Curious Nashville Greatest Hits episode. Cynthia Abrams has been with us all hour. Cynthia is WPLN's Metro reporter and a frequent contributor on Curious Nashville. Cindy, thank you for joining today.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you to our listeners for propelling Curious Nashville for 10 years. We have now answered hundreds of your questions, and we're ready for 100 more. You can ask your question and keep this project going by visiting curious.wpln.org. Thanks for tuning in this hour. This is Nashville is a production of Nashville Public Radio. Tasha A.F. Lemley is our managing editor. Our board operator is Liv Lombardi. Special thanks to host Blake Farmer and to producer Mary Mancini for helping us on our new Curious Nashville theme music. The creators of that theme music are Kurt Wagner and Andrew Broder. You can comment and tell us what you want to hear on the show by leaving us a message at 615-751-2500. You can also find us on Blue Sky and Instagram and X at This Is Nashville. I'm Tony Gonzalez. Stay curious.